Game made quite a few changes over its 10 years on the air. From its graphics, to its logos, its theme tune, the set, uniforms, time slot, air date, not to mention the presenters. But how did the reviews shape up? In this lost chapter, I'm going to take a look at how the reviews evolved over the time Good Game was on the air, through the lens of the Saints Row series. I choose the Saints Row series not just because I'm familiar with it, but because the first Saints Row was the very first game Good Game ever reviewed, back on the 19th of September 2006. The typical episode of Good Game followed this loose format. Introduction, news story, smaller review, report or regular segment like Ask Good Game, filler animation, and big headlining review kept to the second half of the episode. A typical show structure to keep viewers sticking through to the very end. The 2007 Christmas special was the very first episode of Good Game I ever saw, and I tuned in for their Ratchet & Clank review, only to switch the program off the second that was done, 10 minutes into the episode. So I missed out on all these other great reviews, like the original Mass Effect, a review that was over and done with by the 5-minute 20 mark. Mass Effect and Ratchet & Clank were also up against Siphon Filter, Logan's Shadow. I noticed during this review they had to film their TV screens. According to the 2011 published Good Game Gamer's Guide to Good Gaming, capture cards weren't readily available in Australia at this time. Other games featured included Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, the very first Uncharted game, a fantasy game by the name of Liar, which seems to have passed me by all these years, and Unreal Tournament 3. It's such a packed episode, as to be expected for a Christmas special, with all those reviews, a full report on women in gaming from Lux, Good Game Awards, animations, and another segment I missed the first time around called Evolution of a Genre, taking a look at first-person shooters. This episode is so 2007, filled with some iconic games like the first Mass Effect and Uncharted. It couldn't be any more 2007 if they finished with a cover of the song from Portal. Oh wait.
Hey, you should incinerate that.
No, it's mine.
Thank you for watching.
That's my little smile.
I'm making a note here. You're the best.
Christmas end-of-year specials aren't your typical Good Game episode though, and maybe they took a little longer to figure out exactly when to place their biggest reviews. But where did they start off?
Sweet. Saints Row.
Yeah.
Yo, man.
G'day, Junglist and Kapowski, two of the hardest presenters to illustrate. Episode 1 isn't your typical episode. I mentioned in my main video there was a pilot filmed in the pitch to ABC. Details of this can be seen in the Good Game Gamer's Guide to Good Gaming book. They definitely had an idea of what they wanted in their show, but episode 1 they were still figuring some things out. The sole review of the episode was for Saints Row, coming after the news at 3.5 minutes into the show. We get an intro to the game from Junglist, joining Kapowski on the couch. It's very casual, very grunge, very gritty. The gaming room / basement / apartment feel of the set is strong. The structure is there, open with a montage of gameplay, music from the game playing over the top, then transitioning to the review. Running at about 4.5 minutes, gameplay is punctuated by comments from the presenters, not sat on their own armchairs as Good Game would be known for, but side by side on the same couch, turning to face the camera.
Now yo, listen up. Graphics, aim, and movement have all been improved in this game.
All the yo-yos were Kapowski's idea. It's very cool. Probably paved the way for future dress-ups. The review doesn't get too deep on gameplay, but they do at times compare it to the then most recently released Grand Theft Auto game, that being San Andreas, released 2 years prior on the PS2 and original Xbox. This Saints Row on the new Xbox 360. When the 360 was launched in Australia in early 2006, the Pro model cost $650, while the Core was $500. That's equivalent to $963 and $740 today. That silver disc tray surely increased the price. Supply issues proved to be a problem as well, and in the review, Junglist makes sure to mention whether Saints Row is a game truly worth the investment at that time. A handy bit of consumer advice that's surely appreciated.
Is it enough to go out and buy a 360? Probably not. But if you're gonna buy one anyway, and you like the GTA genre, then you will have fun with this game.
Luckily for us, one of the team from Saints Row was in town earlier this week, and we got to catch up with him.
The game culture is featured in other games. What's different about Saints Row? Well, Saints Row are big difference is customization and choice. I mean, you make your own character completely from scratch, and however you want him to look and however you want him to act, and that's your character.
The review finishes off with an interview from one of the developers. I think this goes a long way to show the legitimacy of Good Game at the time. They're going to launch parties, they're interviewing developers, they're conducting themselves in a professional manner. Afterwards, they include some testimonies from real players, which is interesting to see.
Yeah, I prefer this game over GTA. You got free aiming, multiplayer, like bigger maps, more options. I really enjoy it.
Definitely the rocket launcher was the best part about it.
There's nothing really overly serious or shocking about the game itself. No, it's just it's a lot of fun. The whole game's a lot of fun.
Sometimes the gangs talk too hardcore, like too much. It's like overrated. They won't talk like that in real life, even if they were forced to.
We finish off with the scores, a 7 and an 8 out of 10 Rubber Chickens. As to why Good Game reviewed games out of Rubber Chickens, well, I searched far and wide, reading the book, searching the Good Game website, and all I could find was not much. It's distinctive at least. The FAQ on the website did break down their scoring system, explaining what each of their numbers mean. Jumping forwards 25 months to October 2008, and Saints Row 2 entered the den of gaming. Good Game was fairly established by this point. With dozens of episodes under their belt, they'd seen the departure of Kapowski and introduction of Barjo the previous year, and the graphics and set were upgraded to its recognisable arrangement. Saints Row 2 was the big headliner, coming after the review of Fracture, a check-in with the Good Game devs working on the Good Game game Office Wars, which I neglected to really mention last time, and a feature on open world games. 20 minutes in, it was time for the review.
Now, Jung, you know I love to be a gangster.
I've seen you jive talk. It's not pretty.
Well, regardless, imagine how excited I was when I heard in Saints Row 2 I can be an elderly, overweight British gangster with a Harry Potter hat who can chainsaw anyone he likes while swinging a samurai sword from a motorbike, all to a wide selection of classical music. Ha! Go on, imagine it.
I have, and you are very excited.
Oh my God!
Music, montage, the format had been perfected in the 2 years since. Barjo and Junglist hit hard and fast with facts about the game, from customization to freedom, with visuals to back their points up. The discussion really lets you know what kind of game you're in for, and given it's such a violent game steeped with swearing and drug references and use, they're keen to stress just how mature it is.
But I gotta say, being rewarded for using a chainsaw on civilians is pretty hardcore. There's no remorse or battling with conscience either. You hear phrases like, I need to kill someone soon, more than once.
Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart, and it definitely is an adults-only kind of game.
Yeah, you can't help but think if we had an R rating for games in this country, this game would definitely be in it.
And again feature an interview from one of the game's devs, discussing the potentially controversial content of the game.
I'm sure after this one we're gonna raise the eyes of a lot of people, like Jack Thompson and a bunch of other people who are out there, media outlets, because we do have a lot of violent content going on in our game as well. I don't think we're as hardcore or as sexually, explicit as a Grand Theft Auto game type is.
Saints Row 2 was released in the months following GTA 4, the next big installment in that series following 2004's San Andreas. While not perfect, GTA 4 had earned itself an otherwise perfect score of 20, 10 from both presenters, and as a point of comparison for this Saints Row. But then again, isn't it always? At just over 5 minutes in length, the review is absolutely packed. Junglist and Barjo give a pretty clear picture of what you can expect when going into this game, the highs and the lows. I think generally Saints Row is always seen as the lesser of two when compared to GTA, disparagingly referred to as a clone. But 2 has a special place in the hearts of series fans, and the love and praise for it isn't retroactive. As GG laid out here, it may well be worth your time taking a trip to Stillwater.
Good game!
In Saints Row the Third, everything and everyone is collateral damage.
The 8th of November 2011, over 2 years since the departure of Junglist and the appointment of Hex, the she'd settled in and Good Game was at its height, or about to reach it, with the spin-off Spawn Point, wider viewership and influence, and the show in its most iconic form. Well, to me anyway.
After successfully taking over the city of Stillwater, the Saints' popularity and brand has exploded.
There was no new GTA to compare Saints Row the Third to, yet, but the trailer to 5 had dropped a short while before, so they returned to the comparisons to GTA 4. Starting almost 16 minutes into the episode, this review was a long one, 11.5 minutes long. The big releases got a lot of time dedicated to them, even if it's only a fraction of the time that most online game reviews go for.
Horde mode, which is basically a wave mode where you face off against various enemies of different sizes and shapes, and they come wave and wave at a time, and it changes things up, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's horribly unbalanced, but undeniably fun. I mean, we had a great time playing together, and I let out many a girly scream as those tiny zombies swarmed us.
Previous reviews of games with coarse themes had prompted discussions about the necessity and appropriateness of including such content in games, but I'd never seen anything like this. Barjo and Hex spend several minutes talking in eerily conversational tones as they genuinely seem to be wrestling with their feelings about whether Saints Row 3 oversteps the line. I mean the conversational tones are eerie because usually you always see them as presenters, putting on a professional front. It's really great. It made the review stick out to me.
But Hex, we should talk about the giant purple dildo and how this game approaches violence.
Yeah, this is a very crude game, and I have to say I really wrestled with my morals on this one and what I consider to be possibly appropriate in a game like this.
I find this violence less affecting than Grand Theft Auto 4, for example, because Grand Theft Auto 4 is so real, but this, it's all wacky, and so it doesn't bother me personally as much. And you do have the choice whether you want to do it in both of these games. That choice is there for you to make.
Yeah, but in GTA 4 it's treated like a real crime, whereas here I feel it's just glorified with those special moves. I mean, does that choice even need to be in there? And with that giant purple dildo, I mean, it just feels like lowest common denominator kind of humor. I mean, it's not funny.
Yeah, it comes down to choice again with that though, because I found personally myself, I used that dildo once and then I didn't like it. It was silly, and so I just went back to the baseball bat and I never used it again. It comes down to choice again with that though, because I found personally myself, I used that dildo once and then I didn't like it. It was silly, and so I just went back to the baseball bat and I never used it again.
I really appreciated, even then and especially now, that they could have this discussion about their own limits of good and bad taste and their thoughts on the game. And it sort of sold the game to me. Sorry, I guess I was just a rebellious teenager and wanted to design my character and smack pedestrians around with a giant phallus. It sounded hilarious. The double-ender from the cop shop shower in San Andreas could only go so far. I pre-ordered the game and was admittedly let down. I don't think I really listened to Barjo and Hex as they said there was not much more to the joke about the giant phallus other than the existence of a giant phallus. As highlighted by previous Saints Row reviews, a big positive for the game was the interaction with other people, as seen primarily through co-op. When I found a group of people online who were also into Saints Row, the enjoyment increased, but I did perhaps feel a little let down still, through no real fault of Good Games, but maybe my own. Maybe their focus on the game's controversial elements was kind of a Streisand effect and it pulled me in. But honestly, if it hadn't, I would have missed out on a lot of great experiences with people I met through Saints Row the Third, while being constantly told that Saints Row 2 was better and 3 was the ruination of the series.
Good game!
Another big episode on the 27th of August 2013. Less than 2 years since Saints Row the Third, Saints Row IV's review comes again in the latter half of the episode with a runtime of 10.5 minutes. The set is so colourful, the camera moves so dynamic, the professional conversational tone is back. The most offensive thing in Saints Row 4 isn't the crude sex stuff, the violence or bad language, but the somewhat uninspired gameplay.
This is where things started to go downhill for me, and I'm sorry, but I have to have a little bit of a whinge. I mean, this is a game about living out your fantasies with complete abandon, but I found the majority of the missions really uninventive. I know the point is that it's parodying other games, but that's no excuse for rehashing boring quests.
Yeah, I felt the same way about Saints Row the Third. We've had quite a few open world games now, and there is certainly a formula to the objectives you face. But I think so much of this game is about making your own fun in and around the framework of these missions. May I once again present to you Body Throwing Simulator 2013.
Coming out after Australia finally got an R18+ rating for video games, as I discussed in my full video, Saints Row 4 still ran into trouble, and I thought maybe this removal is what led to an upbeat and less than bothered review from Barjo and Hex. That is until...
One last thing I think we have to mention is that after all the drama surrounding the classification of this game, the weapon of contention, the Anal Probe DLC, is still going to be available to Aussies.
Yeah, I think the real issue was about the narcotics in the game, the alien drugs that gave you superpowers, and that's been changed for the Aussie release. And somehow this resubmission of the game has managed to, I guess, put the Anal Probe in some sort of context.
Yeah, so good news for Anal Probe fans. If you really want it, you can pay for it, I guess.
I think by this point, review crafting had become something of an art form, with several long stretches of the review being dedicated to montages or gameplay without additional commentary, letting the footage speak for itself. Barjo and Hex bounce off each other with a rhythmic flow. Something I noticed about this review is it feels like it's catered a little more to regular viewers or gamers in the know. A comment I highlighted in the original video from series creator Sid emphasised the importance of appealing to all viewers, gamer or not, since Good Game is a program airing on ABC and available to all Australians.
Or simply go for Nolan North.
On the campaign trail, I said I was going to accomplish a lot of things. I could never say promise.
Brilliant.
At this point, I knew who Nolan North was. I got the joke. But to any regular viewers, they must be thinking, to quote Sid, what is this foreign language film? Such drastic changes seen to the program over its then 7 years on the air, with 9 seasons in the bag. Each review follows the same formula, highlighting the character customization, missions, cutscenes, and side missions. There's some differences in which bit of info comes first and how much gets a focus, but you can see things remained about the same, just became more polished and flashier in both the games and the reviews. Unfortunately for this, Good Game never checked out the Saints Row 4 spin-off Get Out of Hell. The program was cancelled before the release of spin-off Agents of Mayhem in August 2017. Screenplay, that aired for a short while on Channel 7, with Hex and Nick Boy from Good Game, did check it out, but Screenplay isn't Good Game, so I can't really say anything about it. Good Game existed as Spawn Point from this Spawn Point, and since it was focused on games for younger gamers, the mature rating was too much for them to touch. But skip forward to August 2022, and the newly renamed ABC Gamer YouTube channel was able to check out the new Saints Row reboot. How does it compare?
Saints Row is back with a fresh reboot of the franchise, bringing us a new open world full of the series' signature brand of crass humour,
Big, giant, sweaty horse balls.
Reviewed and narrated by Joe Reardon, known for his time behind the scenes on Good Game as GOG, this review looks and feels very professional. In fact, it's almost too professional. It's great. You know, it's a great little review and really gets to the point of whether this game is worth your time or not. But unfortunately, it's just not Good Game. Which leaves us with 3 years of Good Game without any other games in the series to check out and track the evolution of their reviews. So what other game series can we check out?
Saddle up, partner.
The GTA series didn't see too many releases during Good Game's run, and developer Rockstar's other outputs like Red Dead Redemption, LA Noire and Max Payne 3 were released between GTA 4 and 5. Mass Effect, as I mentioned before, got a very short review in the opening 5 minutes of the 2007 Christmas special. 2 got a much more substantial review, and 3 getting a perfect score, complete with a dance number. I think that review highlighted the shortcomings of the rush to review such a large game in such a short window of time, as that game went on to be quite divisive, and neither Mass Effect or BioWare's other series Dragon Age got a big release in the final years of Good Game. Assassin's Creed was known for its one game every year release schedule, and the Good Game / ABC Gamer YouTube channel has itself a playlist dedicated to these reviews. Call of Duty's first game to be reviewed was 4 back in 2007. Story gets a passing mention, but focuses on the gameplay and the attention to detail. There's also a fun prediction from Junglist.
Speaking of competitive play, Jung, let's get back to what you were saying earlier.
Are you ready for a big call?
Hit me.
Call of Duty 4 has the tactical depth to beat Counter-Strike within a couple of years.
That's a big call.
I warned you.
The final COD game reviewed was Infinite Warfare, in one of the last ever episodes of 2016. The story and the character get much more focus here, at least in comparison to 2007, but still gameplay and features are COD's main focus. Story, character and themes were much more prevalent in games and the reviews as the series went on. Spec Ops: The Line was, at the time, quite a surprising review, mostly as both hosts seemed so taken with a thought-provoking plot, and it stood out to me then, their enthusiasm to discuss the questions the game asked of them.
There are certain events that take place in this game, moral choices that you must make, and a character arc that you must follow, which is both shocking and surprising.
What's going on here?
Survival, Captain. Plain and simple.
The developers have said they take inspiration from the book Heart of Darkness, upon which the movie Apocalypse Now was based. And the results are quite unique for a game like this.
What are they saying now? These people want us gone.
Some games were letdowns but made for interesting reviews, like the walking sim Dear Esther, which Barjo and Hex reflected on last year.
This is pretty much a bushwalking simulator, or a walk 'em up.
This is still how I feel watching it now.
While others like Gone Home were more affecting.
I like to put the things in the drawer, me and you, and close.
Yeah, I worry what you would get up to if left alone in someone's house, Barjo. I really enjoyed this. It kind of sets itself up to be one thing and then sends you on quite a few different paths instead. I just really enjoyed uncovering this mystery. It was great storytelling, I thought. I'm giving it 7.5.
Yeah, I thought the writing and the voice acting was actually quite beautiful, and I appreciated the high-resolution textures and the attention to detail in the environment as well. But at the end of the day, I just think the price point is way too high for a game like this. So for me, it's 6.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Other reviews for games like The Witcher or the Metro series highlighted the richness of the worlds and story.
With Saints Row, the story is the least important element, really. It's just a bit of fun. And I'm not saying that it needs some complex emotional story. Obviously, that's not what this game is about.
According to Junglist in a later interview, reviews were often written by one presenter, with the other adapting their part of the script to suit their tone of voice. This might have been the case for when Junglist was on, but later on I don't really see how it could work since both presenters brought so much of themselves to each review. Maybe they're just really good presenters. Link in the description to Junglist's interview as well. I noticed more and more as the show went on, reviews became spectacles, big game reviews going for over 10 minutes. Despite these long run times, it's less about them having more stuff to say, but more stuff to show, as Barjo and Hex would pause to let the games speak for themselves. This is noticeable in the review for Saints Row 4, and it's a trend that continued right through to the end, as seen with the review for Final Fantasy XV. It's a good mix of show and tell, describing personal experiences and actually displaying the product. It makes me realise just how packed and even rushed some of these early reviews on that show. A review that ran less than 4 minutes could say the same thing that a 10-minute review could, but certainly couldn't show as much. The final ever review is quite conversational, although it's not technically a review but a first play, and these were more like that. According to Barjo in his audio commentary of my full video, the idea was for Good Game to transition into sort of a panel show, I guess similar in style to the specials like the GG spot. Perhaps this final review was a sign of things to come, before cancellation.
For those of you who don't know, each Final Fantasy game is kind of a self-contained story, with the exception of a few spin-offs, I think. So this is a kind of a new story, which I struggled to follow initially. It sort of seemed like it was setting itself up as a traditional old-school fantasy game with princes and kings, but then they were riding around in a convertible.
Yeah, it's a boy band adventure movie.
They're kind of like, yeah, like an emo boy band with smartphones.
It is quite unique.
Yeah, I would have preferred a little bit more story setup, but the reason why I think there isn't enough to get you started is because they've put a lot of money into this animated film, Kingsglaive, which they expect everyone to buy and watch.
You'll notice it's still in the seal, because we have a game to play. We're not going to watch a 2-hour cutscene.
Of course, Good Game continues on a Spawn Point to this day, but their approach to reviewing is much more kid-focused in comparison, but largely follows the same kind of structure. Would you like a more in-depth review of the Spawn Point reviews? Is there another aspect of the Good Game series you'd like to see explored? What was your favourite game that Good Game reviewed? Or perhaps more interestingly, what was a game that Good Game reviewed positively which you were really let down by? For me it was Dead Rising 2. They made it look really fun and I just found it incredibly frustrating. Let me know in the comments below, and thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Royce out.
Should we play out the show with some dubstep?
Why not, Hex? Why not? Drop the bass. Drop it. Drop it on the ground.
You know, it would be great if they just run this whole thing without the music.